I wanted to talk about gluten and how weird allergies can be with it. So, a lot of people think if you're gluten intolerant, you can still eat corn and rice. But actually, corn and rice both have their own gluten protein. It's just not called gluten, right? Um, but I never, years ago, whenever I was a lot younger, I never really thought gluten was bad, right? I mean, I was raised on pasta and macaroni and cheese and bread and all that. But whenever my two older kids were probably in their early to mid teens, my oldest, I had taken her to the doctor and she had asthma and she had eczema really bad. It scarred up her hands. It was extreme. And this doctor that I took her to did some blood work and said that she had antibodies against gluten and that she needed to not eat gluten, and that she also had some genetic markers for that. So she had the genes. So fast forward, she never quit eating it. She now has a baby, just about a year old, and she, feeds the baby gluten, which I think is bad, but it's not my baby, so I can't really say anything. But anyway, her sister was anaphylactic to wheat, barley, and rye. Her sister was 4 years younger than her. So we knew not to feed her gluten, barley, and rye. Well, when her sister was about 12, 13 years old, this was back in the day when we would eat pasta and all that. Anytime that we cooked pasta on the stove, she would go into anaphylactic shock. She would turn, well, I didn't know that that's what it was at the time, but she would turn blue, couldn't breathe. I'd have to call an ambulance, I'd take her to the hospital. It was a whole nightmare. Well, come to find out, it was the steam from the pasta boiling in the water that was going through the house. And the pulmonologist said he's never seen anything like that. He said it was baker's asthma. Typically, it's seen in people that work in bakeries a lot of their life, and they develop an allergy to inhaling any sort of dust. So at that point, we quit cooking pasta. At least when she was home with us, because her dad and I are divorced, so he gets her part of the time. But anyway, so, and then of course our son got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes in 2020. And at that point, we just went basically low carb. And we started following Dr. Richard Bernstein's method. He wrote a book called Diabetes Solutions. I can put a link down in the description if you guys want to check it out. It's a really good book. He was diagnosed when he was 12 with type 1. He's followed the standard American diet, started having all kinds of health issues, neuropathy, gastroparesis, eyes, all that stuff. He went to med school, became an MD, and figured out how to manage it and keep normal blood sugars, just not eating a high carb diet. So anyway, that's the story with that. So we started managing our son's diabetes just like that. And so we cut out pasta, rice, all of that, and no bread. And we lived in this house for like 20 years. We had it built new. And then I decided in 2020, 2021 that I wanted to be off grid, wanted to raise our own food, and we started looking for land. Well, COVID hit and there was nothing available, like nothing at all. So we kind of settled for this old farmhouse that was built in 1918 on about 10 or 11 acres. And we bought it and we thought, we'll just remodel it, no big deal. So we were in there for, I would say, a couple of months, and we have 3 kids together, and the middle one started getting sick. So we couldn't figure out why. Like, it started out just real subtle, like stuffiness, constant stuffiness, couldn't breathe, had to sleep on like 7 pillows at night, just constant congestion. So then about 6 months after we moved into this house, whoever had lived there before had put the wood planks on the wall, to be kind of rustic. And I thought they were ugly. So I took them down, and as soon as I pulled them down, there was all this black mold. I don't know that it was black mold, but the color was black behind the wall. And I knew it was bad, but like I didn't think it was that big of a deal. Like, I was kind of stupid. I thought you just rip it out and just replace it, and that's fine. Well, come to find out, it was leaking because they had improperly installed this balcony off of her bedroom upstairs. So the balcony, they didn't put any of the sheathing or whatever that's called. Sorry, battery died. They didn't put any of the sheathing or whatever that's called, the metal, up against the house. And so the balcony was kind of slanted, and when it would rain, all the water would go downstairs and run down this wall. So that's where all the mold came from. But anyway, so we ripped out all the sheetrock. Well, the OSB board on the outside of the house was also moldy on the inside. We stayed. I guess I just didn't think it would be like a huge problem. But we stayed. We stayed in the house a total of like 2 years and 4 months or something. Well, by the time we left, she was very, very sick. Very sick. Weird symptoms, like just random crying. She couldn't concentrate. She couldn't even go to school. We pulled her out of school. They let her homeschool, which was great. But she was so sick. Just crying all the time, couldn't breathe, congestion, felt like she was having asthma attacks all the time. And, I took her to the doctor countless times, to this pediatrician's office, and they didn't do anything. I mean, they just said it was asthma. They put her on Symbicort and albuterol and sent her home. And, even if I brought up the mold, they acted like I was crazy. Like, no, it's not going to do that. Like, unless she has a mold allergy. Like, no, that's ridiculous. So, because COVID had hit, and I was already skeptical about all of that. I started digging, and luckily we had some friends that suggested, to get her tested for mold. But anyway, she did some blood work a couple years ago, and she has the genes that make her susceptible to gluten sensitivity, celiac, and it's just so weird how doctors do not test for this. So my advice is, if you guys are having any weird symptoms, chronic congestion, you need to think about your environment. I mean, yeah, technically we should be able to detox from any kind of mold, but a lot of people can't. They have those HLA alleles that just make them more susceptible to not be able to get those mycotoxins out, flush them out, and move on. So, if you're a medical provider, whether that's an MD or a DO or a nurse practitioner, if they're not knowledgeable, go find somebody who is, right? Go do your own research, look it up, try to figure it out on your own. There's the eye test online, the vision contrast something, VSC eye test that you can do for free. Do that and go from there. Find a functional medicine provider that is fluent in, CIRS, the chronic inflammatory response syndrome, or mold toxicity or something. But typically those people that can't handle gluten are usually susceptible to the mycotoxins too. So it's kind of a double whammy. But anyway, so now we bought this house here. We moved, bought a new house, and now I have 2 payments. Still working on the other house. I don't even know what we're gonna do. We're kind of in a bind, but I'm sure it'll all work out, and we learn. So anyway, I just want to talk about that and just tell you guys, if you have any weird symptoms, just pay attention and just think about that, because that could be a possibility. It could be gluten, it could be something in your diet, it could be mold. I mean, who knows? But don't just go to the doctor and take their word for it and then go on, because they don't always know. So anyway, okay, that's all I want to say.